maybe went or did not. As I was thinking back over today's sermon, the beginning part of it, we'll read it here in a minute, is talking about sitting on a beach chair on the beach watching the ocean. And while we enjoyed our time in Kansas, Kansas is not the beach. It rained all the way there, and as soon as we got in the truck to get back, it rained all the way back. So those times on the beach definitely was what we kind of were jealous of, if you will. But we still had a great time. I want you to imagine with me, if you will, if you did go to the beach, or if you've been recently, you're sitting on a folding beach chair watching the sunrise or the sunset over the ocean. Brilliant rays of light color the horizon. The sound of that gentle waves lapping the sand delights you as the cold ocean water washes over your toes. A breeze caresses your cheek. You inhale that fresh, salty air. Moment by moment, the scene shifts and changes. The sun bursts into sight. Seagulls dip and call. Waves crest and roll away. Your heart fills. Your mouth opens. You feel like singing. You feel like saying, thank you. You feel like worshiping. Chances are you've been there or somewhere like it. Maybe it wasn't at the sunrise or sunset at the beach. Possibly it was on a woodland path or beside a thundering waterfall. Or maybe it's the maternity ward as a new life enters your family. Whenever, wherever it happened, in that moment, you felt this urge of something wonderful, something emotional, something joyful, something worth giving gratitude toward, something worth worshiping. No matter where you are in your spiritual journey, you have a need to worship. You have felt drawn upward. You have longed for this experience, to experience the supernatural, to experience the connection with God. You are here today in the church because the church helps us experience the benefits of such worship. What do you believe? Do you know what you believe in? And do you have the ability to experience that belief? We want to know God. We want to feel a connection with Him. We also sense that there are benefits to be enjoyed when we do so. God offers us blessings. Such blessings are beyond our wildest imagination. We are meant to worship. One of the reasons the church exists is to help us fulfill our God-given need to worship. The Bible describes this very need in the very first church in the earliest days when it says this in Acts 2:46. It'll be behind me on the screen there. If you'll follow along with me, every day they devoted themselves to meeting together in the temple complex. Now, that would be equivalent to today's church. And they broke bread from house to house. They ate their food with a joyful and a humble attitude. Wow. Can you picture that? People spending time together. They're so excited to spend time together that it's an experience of joy and worship and praise. Because worship renews. Worship renews the mind, heart, and the life. One day when Isaiah was worshiping in the temple, he received a vision and heard God's voice in a way that scared him, changed him, and took his life in a completely different direction. True worship will often do this. It will remind you of who God is and who you are. And what is that connection? It will change you. It will point your steps in a new direction. It will focus you on what's truly important. It will turn you around. May even turn you into someone you never imagined that See, worship does many things. What we're going to talk about today are just a few of the things that worship does. One of the things that worship does is it chases away fear, doubt, worry, and selfishness. As we look into the Bible, we meet King Saul. And oftentimes King Saul is perceived as a villain because he's the opposition of King David, who's one of the great heroes of the Bible. But we find something interesting about worship through King Saul. You see, King Saul was tormented by anxiety and depression. But when David, a true worshiper of God, who served in Saul's court, played and sang for the king, Saul would find this sense of relief, this sense of release that he had from this anxiety, this torment. How many of us come to church, maybe go Sunday in and Sunday out, to be quite honest, but we come to church tired. We come to church discouraged. We come to church drained and even depressed. But when we leave, our spirits are lifted. Worship chases away fear, doubt, worry, and selfishness. Worship also provides for us an outlet of gratitude. One of the fascinating quote that I came across was from an English painter and poet, Dante Gabriel Rossetti. And he famously said, "The worst moment for the atheist is when he is really thankful and has nobody to thank." One of the great blessings of worship is to provide an outlet for gratitude that often overwhelms our heart because we're so blessed. As the Bible says, our cup overflows. You see, worship provides an outlet for gratitude. Worship also attunes your heart to the voice of God. Now let's be honest. How many of us, during a crucial crossroads of life, would love to hear the audible voice of God? You know, we have a tough decision to make, and we just want God. We know He's got a whole universe to run, but we want God to take a moment, just sit down, have a cup of coffee with us, and tell us, I don't know if God drinks coffee, but that's another story, and tell us what we want to, what direction to go. What is the right decision? And for many of us, we think that's impossible. For a lot of people, they think that's impossible. The reality is, we're not looking in the right way. We're looking for an audible voice, but God is very outspoken. When the ears of our hearts, so to speak, aren't accustomed to hearing God, when He speaks, we don't hear Him. But one of the blessings of regular worship is when it attunes the worshiper's heart, your heart, my heart, to the voice of God. What's an example of this? Well, we find it in the Bible with Samuel. Samuel, who lived and slept in the house of the Lord, he pretty much lived in the church. It was a temple, but he lived in the church. And when God called Samuel out, he was in God's house. He was available with the help of Eli the priest. And he soon recognized and obeyed God's voice. And he said, "Here I am, Lord. I'm ready to hear your words." When we open up our hearts, when we open up our minds, and we dive into God's word, and we open up our hearts and mind during our prayer time, God will speak to us. And you'll know it. It's not an audible voice. I'm not going to say that it is. But you will know it when that time comes. It will help you make that crucial choice that you have to, or it will help you grow in more and more of a dependence toward God and putting it on Him. So much of the time, we like to take things in. We like to hold on to things. The things that hurt us, we want to hold on. We want to fix it because we're independent and we can do it. But how often do we just need to give it up? You see, worship sows the seeds of joy in your life. Rick Warren says an amazing thing happens when we offer praise and thanksgiving to God. When we give God enjoyment, our own hearts are filled with joy. Our worship of God improves our life to the point that brings us joy. And we are blessed when we have a life that God is active and involved with. The church can also help us become better worshipers. You see, because the church is a training ground for those of us who are worshiping. Now, what do I mean by that? How can we improve our worship? How can we be better worshipers? True worship doesn't automatically happen. You know, when someone, if it's their first time ever coming to church, when they come into the doors of the church, there's not this automatic transformation that happens and they get in the pews and they're ready to worship. They're never ready. They're not expecting it. And if you can imagine, many of us grew up in the church, so it's kind of hard for us to see this, but if you can imagine walking into church for the very first time, I'm not talking about a new church. I'm talking about church, period. You've never been in church. You walk in here, and everybody says, all right, stand and sing. We're going to sing this song. And you look around, and everybody's singing. Do you know the words? No. Do you know the song? I have no idea. And it may be a head scratcher for you. Why are all these people shouting out and singing? It may not be something you're accustomed to. You see, that's the training ground. That's when the training starts for worship. Is that first exposure. Now, it is in every one of us to have a nature, to become natural when we worship. It's in each and every one of us to worship. We want to worship something. But the hole in our heart for worship is a God-sized hole. Nothing else will actually fit into that. Now, we can try, but it's not a perfect fit. Psalm 95, 1 through 2 and 6, David tells us this much when he says, come, let us shout joyfully to the Lord. Shout triumphantly to the rock of our salvation. Let us enter his presence with thanksgiving. Let us shout triumphantly to him in song. Come, let us worship and bow down. Let us kneel before the Lord, our Maker. Sounds good. But did you know that this is actually words to a famous song? So many of our songs that we sing actually come from Scripture. And so many of them actually come from David's words. And it's because he was in tune, he was on the same page with God, and he knew the importance of worship. And that has carried on from generation to generation, from hundreds to now thousands of years later. Now, when we talk about worship, people worship in different ways. You may not feel comfortable bowing and kneeling. And you definitely may not feel comfortable just shouting during worship. But everyone has their own style. Some churches are more formal than others, as you'll see them with their suits and ties and so on and so forth. I would not last there because I don't wear a suit. But some of them are more traditional. Some are more expressive than others, and so on and so forth. But that's a good thing. Diversity is not necessarily disunity. In the church, as in creation, God delights in the different colors and sounds and styles. But we are here to be trained to worship. Worshiping with others on a constant basis in church breaks down the barriers, gives us the training that we need, not only in our worship style, but also in our worship skills. As you gather together, as we gather together with others, we become more and more comfortable singing our praises to God, as the Bible tells us to. Now, when I say training for worship, it's not coming here and all of a sudden you can carry a tune. It's not trying to get you to carry that to have, I don't even know what I'm talking about, but to have that perfect pitch. You're not going to automatically be able to sing well just because you are trained to worship. Because it's not about that. For someone who can't sing, I'll sing loud, and sometimes people next to me will say, shh. But anyway, that's beside the point. I'm singing my heart to God. And that's what God's looking for. Over time, you'll get better, knowing the words. And you'll be able to personalize it. That's what I want you to consider and think about. Is next time you're worshiping, look at the words. Pay attention to them. I think all too often we think, oh, this is my favorite song, or this is one of my favorite songs. I really enjoy this song. I'm so glad we're singing it today. We just kind of go to it. Or we come across a song and we're like, oh, I wish they would give this one up. Or we think, I don't think that. Or we think all these thoughts. And we lose sight of what we're actually singing. Pay attention to the words. Make sure that when you worship, when you sing, that you're meaning the words that you say, and that you're gearing them toward God. Just as you may not be one of those fantastic singers during worship, you may not be one of those people that pray in public, and that's okay. When we come together for worship, there will be people who have that gift, who feel comfortable praying in public, who can pray in public. And those are opportunities for us to learn. And we may be in awe at the simplicity and the beauty of one person's prayers. The prayers that I love to hear, sounds kind of weird because I know they're not geared toward me, but the ones that I just so much appreciate are those that are from the heart. You know it's what they mean. The first church that I served as I was youth minister at, everybody had, when they would pray, they had this typed out prayer that they would always pray. You know, the elders would come during the communion, just as we do here, and they would come up and they would just read this typed out prayer. And you kind of wonder, okay, how much is that sincere? Or is it just rehearsed? You know, someone's prayer, the simplicity, the faith that they have is something to look up to. On the other hand, the Bible talks about someone who prayed with arrogance and how they lost sight of God, the Pharisee and the publican. And as you listen, it's an opportunity for us to learn. And as you watch people, some people may say, you're not supposed to watch people during worship. I say watch them, because you can learn. You may be watching somebody across the room with their hands cupped as if saying, Lord, I'm ready to receive whatever you give me today. Or you may see a teenager drawing on or writing on a piece of paper, and you may think, are they drawing funny drawings, or are they passing notes? But in actuality, that's what they're doing. They're taking notes during the sermon. And that's maybe